Trump tariffs detonate. U.S. drug prices on fire.
100% drug tariff shock. America faces price explosion.
25% truck tariff hits. Jobs and markets reeling.
Furniture imports crushed. New tariffs collapse supply chains.
Drugs, trucks, furniture. 3 industries, 1 strike. In a single announcement, Trump unleashed tariffs so steep they read like economic shock therapy. 100% on patented medicines, 25% on heavy-duty trucks, and up to 50% on furniture and cabinetry. The White House says it's protection. Markets call it chaos, because the fallout isn't just abstract numbers, it's the cost of your next prescription, the truck that delivers your groceries, the chair you sit on in your own home. Prices are set to explode, jobs are already on the line, and America, already rattled by inflation, is bracing for impact. Let's cut straight to it. On September 26th, President Donald Trump announced one of the most aggressive tariff packages in modern American history: 100% tariffs on patented, branded pharmaceutical drugs, 25% on heavy-duty truck imports, 30 to 50% on key furniture and cabinetry products. This isn't just a trade adjustment, it's a seismic jolt to multiple pillars of the U.S. economy all at once. Start with pharmaceuticals. For decades, the United States has imported huge volumes of branded medicines from Europe, Japan, and beyond. These are not cheap generics. These are life-saving drugs, cancer therapies, insulin analogs, cutting-edge treatments for rare diseases. Trump's new rule: if the company hasn't already broken ground on a U.S. manufacturing site, their products face a 100% tariff. Translation: a drug that cost $400 a month could now cost $800. The impact is immediate. Roche, Pfizer's European divisions, and Japan's Takeda are all on the radar. The administration insists this will onshore production, forcing Big Pharma to build American plants. But here's the catch. Building a pharmaceutical facility takes years, not months. So what happens in the meantime? Prices explode. Patients and insurers eat the cost, and families already struggling with healthcare bills are shoved closer to bankruptcy. Now, the trucks. A 25% tariff on heavy-duty imports. That means Freightliner cabs from Daimler, Scania and MAN models from Europe, Volvo trucks from Sweden. At first glance, American companies like Peterbilt and Kenworth may cheer. They gain a cost edge, but don't celebrate yet. Because imported parts, steel, and components still crisscross supply chains. Tariffs don't just hit finished trucks, they ripple backward into the cost of building them. And let's not forget, trucking is the backbone of U.S. logistics. Raise truck prices and you raise transport costs. That means food, furniture, electronics, everything on wheels. Then comes the household sector. Cabinets, vanities, upholstered furniture. Tariffs ranging from 30 to 50%. This hits imports from Vietnam, China, and parts of Eastern Europe. Think about who pays. Not luxury buyers, not billionaires. Middle-class families renovating kitchens. First-time home buyers furnishing apartments. Students buying affordable sofas. Prices jump, orders shrink, importers cut staff, and U.S. retailers who rely on low-cost supply chains start sweating. So why strike now? The administration frames this as protection of American industry, pharmaceutical independence, trucking jobs, furniture factories reopening in North Carolina or Michigan.
But behind the rhetoric is politics and economics. Inflation remains sticky. Growth is slowing. Tariffs give the image of strength. America standing up to imports, demanding domestic production. It plays well on a campaign stage. Yet economists warn the timing is combustible. Because tariffs don't just punish foreign exporters, they punish American consumers. And they pour gasoline on inflation at the very moment the Federal Reserve is fighting to contain it. The markets didn't wait. Asian pharma stocks tumbled overnight. Indian drug makers saw sell-offs, even though generics are less exposed. European truck manufacturers lost billions in market value. U.S. furniture retailers braced for supply chain shocks. Wall Street, already nervous, now has to price in the risk of higher inflation and delayed interest rate cuts. In plain English, your mortgage stays expensive longer, your groceries cost more, and your retirement savings tremble under volatility. If this feels familiar, it should. Trump's first trade war in 2018 to 2019 targeted Chinese steel, aluminum, and electronics. Back then, the world saw tit-for-tat tariffs. Farmers lost export markets. Prices rose. Negotiations dragged on for years. Now, the difference is scale and sector. We're not talking about steel beams. We're talking about the drugs in your medicine cabinet. Tariffs on survival itself. Here's what it means for an ordinary American family. A cancer patient paying $6,000 a month for treatment could see that double instantly. A small trucking company buying 5 new rigs faces an extra $250,000 bill. A couple renovating their kitchen suddenly pays 40% more for cabinets. These aren't abstract percentages. They're real shocks hitting real households, and they land hardest on the middle class, the very voters politicians claim to defend.
Already, allies are bristling. The EU and Japan argue their trade deals cap U.S. drug tariffs at 15%. They insist Washington can't unilaterally impose 100% duties. This fight is headed for courts, councils, and possibly the WTO. Singapore's deputy prime minister has already said pharma firms there are seeking clarity and exemptions. Translation: governments are preparing for battles behind closed doors. But while diplomats argue prices at home climb, that's the brutal lag between politics and reality. Here's the contradiction nobody wants to admit. The tariffs are supposed to protect jobs, but the sectors they target, pharma, trucks, furniture, rely heavily on complex global supply chains. Break those chains, and you don't bring jobs back instantly. You risk shutting down factories while waiting for replacements. The short term is pain. The long term is uncertain. So, what comes next? Lawsuits from allies, inflation spikes, retaliatory tariffs on American exports, and potentially a trade war bigger than 2018's. But here's the deeper layer. These tariffs aren't just about economics. They're about power, perception, and America's place in a world where supply chains are already fragile. And that's what we will see. The hidden consequences nobody is talking about, and the scenarios that could reshape the global economy. We ended with a cliffhanger, tariffs that hit not just steel or solar panels, but the very essentials of everyday life. Now we go deeper, because this story doesn't end at the border. It spreads like wildfire through global trade, diplomacy, and the fragile fabric of the US economy.
The EU and Japan have already drawn red lines. They point to binding trade deals that cap US drug tariffs at 15%. If Washington insists on 100%, allies have two options: drag America to court at the WTO or strike back with their own tariffs. Either path risks escalation. Picture this. The EU slaps retaliatory duties on US agricultural exports: soybeans, beef, corn. Japan restricts US auto imports. Canada targets US lumber. Suddenly, American farmers and factories are pulled into the very war meant to protect them. This isn't speculation. It happened before. In 2018, when Trump hit steel and aluminum, the EU retaliated with tariffs on Harley-Davidson motorcycles, bourbon, and orange juice. Exports plunged, jobs disappeared. The same playbook is back on the table, only bigger. Let's talk inflation. The Federal Reserve has been trying to squeeze prices back down, holding interest rates at painful highs. Wall Street bet on cuts this winter. But tariffs? They're like an inflation bomb. A 100% tariff on branded drugs doubles costs. A 25% tariff on trucks raises freight prices across every industry. A 50% tariff on furniture hits consumer wallets head-on. The Bureau of Labor Statistics already shows healthcare and housing costs as the heaviest burdens on U.S. families. Now both categories, medicine and furniture, face tariff shock. That means the inflation needle spikes again. And if the Fed can't cut rates, mortgages stay expensive, business loans choke off, growth slows, recession risk rises. Tariffs are sold as job protection. We'll bring factories back. But reality is messier.
Pharma plants take years to build. Meanwhile, prices rise, but jobs don't magically appear. Drug tariffs raise costs for logistics firms, which may cut drivers instead of hiring more. Furniture tariffs crush retailers. Think of mid-tier chains already struggling with e-commerce. Instead of job growth, you risk layoffs. And those job losses aren't offshore, they're here, in American towns. No sector shows the stakes more brutally than medicine. In the US, nearly 60% of adults take at least one prescription drug. Millions depend on imported branded treatments for chronic conditions. These aren't luxury items, they're survival. A 100% tariff doubles the price instantly. Insurers face higher payouts. Medicare and Medicaid budgets strain. Patients without coverage face impossible choices. Pay the bill or skip the medicine. That's not just economics, that's life and death. And here's the deeper contradiction. By punishing imports, the US may worsen shortages. If companies pull back shipments rather than pay tariffs, shelves could empty. Imagine insulin running scarce, cancer drugs delayed, or specialty treatments rationed. And now picture America's supply chains. 72% of goods in the US move by truck. Groceries, fuel, furniture, electronics. A 25% tariff on imported heavy trucks means fewer new rigs, higher fleet costs, and older trucks staying on the road longer. That means higher maintenance costs, more breakdowns, and ultimately higher shipping rates passed straight to consumers. Already, the trucking industry faces a driver shortage and thin profit margins. This tariff could push smaller carriers into bankruptcy, and when carriers collapse, shelves empty and prices climb. Furniture might sound trivial compared to medicine, but it's not. It's a core marker of middle-class life. Moving into a first apartment, renovating a starter home.
With 30 to 50% tariffs on cabinets, sofas, and vanities, imports from Vietnam, China, and Eastern Europe get hammered. US producers can't fill the gap instantly. Families see prices skyrocket. Construction firms and contractors see projects stall. And remember, construction and home furnishing are engines of local jobs: carpenters, truckers, retail clerks. Kill demand with price hikes, and you choke the job market in towns already fragile. Markets have already reacted. Indian pharma stocks tumbled. European truck makers lost billions in market value. US retail and healthcare stocks are swinging on every headline. Investors hate uncertainty, and tariffs create maximum uncertainty. Which sectors get hit next? Which allies retaliate? How long will it last? The result? Volatility. Your retirement fund trembles, your 401k shrinks. Wall Street banks prepare for storms while Main Street feels the rain. Why risk this? Because politically, tariffs sell. They sound strong. We're protecting American jobs. We're bringing production home. It rallies a base. It projects power. But there's a dark irony. The voters most energized by protectionism are often the same ones most hurt by price hikes. Rural families paying more for medicine. Trucking towns squeezed by higher costs. Middle America hit hardest. It's a gamble. Can political theater outweigh economic pain? Here's the layer most Americans don't see. This isn't just domestic policy, it's global power. When the US uses tariffs as weapons, allies start questioning trust. Can Europe rely on American trade commitments? Can Japan? Can Canada? If allies lose faith, they hedge, they turn to China, they deepen BRICS ties, they cut deals elsewhere. If allies lose faith, they hedge, they turn to China, they deepen BRICS ties, they cut deals elsewhere. And slowly, US leadership erodes, not with a bang, but with tariffs.
Let's map 3 possible futures. The inflation spiral. Tariffs stick. Prices rise. The Fed can't cut rates. Recession risk climbs. Ordinary families pay the price. The trade war escalation. Allies retaliate. Farmers and exporters suffer. The cycle spins like 2018, only harsher. The short-term bluff. Tariffs trigger panic, but within months, exemptions and backroom deals soften the blow. The chaos cools, but trust in US stability is permanently weakened. Here's the truth hidden beneath the headlines. Tariffs don't create wealth, they shift pain. They shift it from one sector to another, from one country to another, from one household to another. But this time, the shift isn't invisible. It's medicine, trucks, furniture, the backbone of daily life. And when tariffs target survival, mobility, and home itself, the fallout isn't abstract economics, it's lived reality. So what do we know? Trump's tariffs just exploded across 3 industries. They promise protection, they deliver pain. They risk inflation, retaliation, and global mistrust.
The question left hanging isn't whether Americans will feel it. They will. The question is, how much can households absorb before the breaking point arrives? This isn't just trade policy. It's a stress test of America's resilience. The next months will decide whether these tariffs stand as a bold defense of industry or as the spark that collapses confidence at home and abroad.